أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولقد آتينا لقمان الحكمة أن اشكر لله ومن يشكر فإنما يشكر لنفسه ومن كفر فإن الله غني حميد. وإذ قال لقمان لابنه وهو يعظه يا بني لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. ووصينا الإنسان بوالديه حملته أمه وهنا على وهن وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير. وإن جاهداك على أن تشرك بي ما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما وصاحبهما في الدنيا معروفا واتبع سبيل من أناب إلي ثم إلي مرجعكم فأنبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا بني إنها إن تك مثقال حبة من خردل فتكن في صخرة أو في السماوات أو في الأرض يأت بها الله إن الله لطيف خبير. يا بني أقم الصلاة وأمر بالمعروف وانه عن المنكر واصبر على ما أصابك إن ذلك من عزم الأمور. ولا تصعر خدك للناس ولا تمش في الأرض مرحا إن الله لا يحب كل مختال فخور. واقصد في مشيك واغضض من صوتك إن أنكر الأصوات لصوت الحمير. ألم تروا أن الله سخر لكم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وأسبغ عليكم نعمه ظاهرة وباطنة ومن الناس من يجادل في الله بغير علم ولا هدى ولا كتاب منير. وإذا قيل لهم اتبعوا ما أنزل الله قالوا بل نتبع ما وجدنا عليه آباءنا أولو كان الشيطان يدعوهم إلى عذاب السعير. ومن يسلم وجهه إلى الله وهو محسن فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى وإلى الله عاقبة الأمور.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So, Alhamdulillah, today is the topic. It's the overall topic of our discussion is education, and through some verses of the Quran, we'll see how the different dimensions and the different steps of the spiritual, the intellectual, and social education is put in some of these verses, and the starting point is the starting point for us, which is quite interesting, is when we are dealing with these verses, to remember that the one who is talking about education to his son is a man, which once again, it's a very simple introduction, but for anyone who could say, oh, there are not so many women within the Quran, the only clear verses where it's a whole discussion about education is this relationship between a father and his son, setting the framework, giving the principles, and being involved in the discussion about what should be the very essence of a human being, and the relationship between the father, the son, and God. So this is important for us, as we all know that in our communities today, in our societies today, very often there is this syndrome of the absent father, which is a clear answer to this, that there will be no education within a family if the father is not involved. And the way it's done here, it's through a discussion, a step-by-step process that we have to understand. Now, if we come to the first verses that we have here, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the beginning, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِلَّهِ. And then just after this, وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. That there is something which is a very simple verse, but it's very deep from the very beginning. There are three words that are important here. The first one is al-hikmah, wisdom. And as you know, in the Quran, there is a verse saying, يُؤْتِ الْحُكْمَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. So Allah gives wisdom to whoever He wants. وَمَنْ يُؤْتَ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. He gives this wisdom to whoever He wants, and whoever gets this wisdom, he gets something which is a great gift. خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا, it's a very huge gift that he got from Allah. What is hikmah here? It's this hikmah, it's understanding the meaning and putting the right thing at the right place. Is always based on balancing. Someone who is wise is always getting the overall picture of things and the right balance. This is why it's always connected to the fairness and balancing things. التوازن, which is in all the philosophies, all the spiritualities, wisdom is central. And in Islam, very often the word hikmah is understood as the way the Prophet ﷺ translated the Quranic teaching. This is why you have this verse saying, كما أرسلنا فيكم رسولا منكم يتلو عليكم آياتنا ويزكيكم ويعلمكم الكتاب والحكمة. الكتابة here is the Quran. Al-Hikmah is understood by the scholars as the prophetic traditions, the way the Prophet was, ﷺ. But not only. There is something which is Al-Hikmah, is getting the text and understanding the text and implementing the text in a balanced way. So it's not even only understanding, is getting the deep meaning. Wisdom is you with your mind and with your heart. Is balancing between heart and mind. It's balancing between all the dimensions. And Luqman, talking to his son, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that He gave him hikmah, which is getting the whole picture. And once again, education is not only about means, education is about the objective. And by starting these verses like this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, be careful. We teach and we educate to get hikmah, not to get knowledge. And you can be knowledgeable without wisdom, but you need to get knowledge in order to get this wisdom. So it's putting the ends, the goals of education from the very beginning by the example of the father. So the father is the one who is teaching his son the means to get to the end. And the end is this wisdom, which is how you have to be with Allah. The second word which is important here is anishkur lillah. Ishkur lillah is give thank to God. And how are you going to give thank to God? You can't thank anybody if you don't understand what He's giving you. So thanking is, you need to thank Him not only by saying, I know that there is only one God. You should understand that there is one God and that He gave you something. So this gift, you will get it through what? Your mind and your heart. Because a gift is always, when you get a gift, is always touching two dimensions in you. A gift is my mind is understanding and my heart is feeling. Anishkur lillah. So you have to get this relationship. Wisdom is based on heart and mind. Gift is understand with your mind and with your heart. You need to get the two. So anishkur lillah, the very beginning of Tawheed is not only la ilaha illallah that you get with your mind, is understanding that you are getting something from Allah, which is why He's Ar-Rahman. His mercy is to give you something, that He gave you this faith, and then to thank Him for that. So it's a relationship of acknowledgement and understanding with your heart and with your mind. This is something which is important. Why? Because there is a second thing which is important. You get a gift and you have to thank Allah. Anishkurillah. And it is said, and this is why you have the verse is important after that. If you thank for yourself, not for Him. Which in fact, when you get the gift coming from Allah, you understand that your dependence. You are dependent on Him and He's not on you. So get this right. Why? Because the relationship that you had with Allah here, when it is said in here, وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ, which here for he who is grateful is but grateful for the good of his own self, whereas he who chooses to be ungrateful, verily God is self-sufficient. Here there is something which is important, is the relationship that you have to God is to acknowledge the fact in your own education that you are dependent and He is not. Allah doesn't need you and you need Him. So a shukr is setting a relationship which is going to be important, because at the end of your education there will be power again. And you will see at the end of all this passage that Allah is telling us, don't you see that you have power over things? So your dependence towards Him is also going to be the way you are understanding that being dependent is the way you are going to use your own power with things around you. And education is about this. Education is about acknowledging your dependency and using your power. So, and educating is what? Educating is, when I teach you, when I educate you, I give you means for you to deal with your own self. And the first thing is, to be educated is know the dimensions and all the dimensions of your own dependence. And if you acknowledge this, if you say thank you, it's for your own sake. It's not for Allah. Allah doesn't need you. You need Him. So education is all about that, by the way. The way you are going to be with God, you are going to be also with your parents when you are a child. When you start the process, education is all about starting to be humble, to get the knowledge for the one who knows, or the one who can give you. So it's God first, and then you will enter into a process where Luqman is talking to his son in a way which is helping him to understand that. And al-hikmah is this. Wisdom is about that. Wisdom is always to acknowledge your own dependence towards God. Dependency, which is the relationship that we have. So this is the first dimension where he's talking about his son and telling him that your relationship with Allah is understanding, thinking, your mind and your heart. All this should be involved in the process of understanding your relationship. And then he talks to his son. وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ. So this is also something which is now a deep understanding of your relationship to Tawheed. So you can see here that Luqman will start with the fundamentals. And the fundamentals is, first you think, and then what you have to understand is no shirk. No shirk is at the same time a principle and an objective. A principle and an objective. Why? The principle is don't worship any other being, because this is injustice. So the fact that you are unjust with God is to think that there is another power beside him. The second thing here, when it comes to Tawheed, is this understanding that إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ, which is the biggest injustice that you can do towards God, is not to worship him. So this is a principle. You start with this. But you will see, and we should know, that at the same time is an objective. Why? Because the way we are, even with our own ego, there are levels of shirk that we have to face. The biggest one, and then the hidden shirk. So it's an objective as well. So you have to purify the way you worship Allah, always by trying to go beyond anything which has to do with shirk. The biggest one and the small hidden one, which could be your own ego. So this is where education is at the same time a liberating process. By acknowledging that there is one God, acknowledging that your main objective is this Tawheed in your heart. It's the principle you start with, and the objective you are trying to reach in your life. So Tawheed is not something that you say once and for all. It's something that you struggle for. Tawheed is the main objective, is to free your heart from, and this is why the way you do this, it's also something which is important, is the way you permanently acknowledge that there is one God, but you thank him. You thank him, and by thanking him, you know your dependence towards his presence. So these are the fundamentals and that are important in our life as principles, but also as objectives that you need to understand. And then comes the journey. Principles and the journey. So education is about steps. And the first thing that he's saying so you need to thank God, you need to understand that, and then the first relationship will be what? As much as God is self-sufficient, acknowledge your own needs. And the first dimension is your parents. Saying something in your education here that is important, once again, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ وَفِصَالُهُ فِي عَامَيْنِ. So the first dimension that is set as to the parents is the acknowledgement that your mother went through this pain over pain, just to give you this life through the will of God. So the acknowledgement, once again, will be what? Know what your mother went through, and remember, thank your parents. Thanking your parents is to acknowledge that you are dependent. This is the first dimension. The second dimension is that there is no way for you to be with God if you are not in this way with your parents. And this is why you have exactly the word that we had at the beginning, coming back here, when it is said, Anishkurli wali walidayka. Anishkurli wali walidayka. Know from where the gifts are coming. I gave you life, and I gave you your parents, and you get this life through your parents to come back to me. So this first circle that you need to understand, it's all, once again, the way it's put here as to your own education. is to acknowledge from where comes your dependence and your power. So get it right. At the end, this is something which is important. Educating somebody is helping her or him to use his power, intellectual power, physical power, psychological power. It has to do with empowerment. Educating is empowering. But the starting point of empowering, it's acknowledge your need. Know all you need, and it's the starting point of humility. So this is where the principles that we have with Luqman here are important when he is saying this. And saying something which is important, you thank your God, you thank your parents, wa ilayya al-masir. Ilayya al-masir means there is a journey here. The journey of your life is you are coming back to me. I gave you life, you have your parents, acknowledge your dependency with your heart. Anishkur, once again, is heart and mind. The relationship here, it's very important. It's to acknowledge. But you will see something which is coming straight after this verse, which is once again very important in the process of education. So, mind, heart, and then in the verse that is come, وَإِن جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِمَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. So here there is something that we need to get in all the Muslim family. When it is said, if they are asking you, we said at the beginning that Tawheed is the principle. If your parents are pushing you or asking you to associate with me something that you have no knowledge about, which is associating to me means what? It could be if they are letting you think that your obedience towards them should be absolute. This is shirk. This is shirk. No shirk. Don't obey. So here you get something which is important. In the process of education, you need to know your dependency and you need to have a critical thinking. By saying no to your parents means you know what is right and you know what is wrong. So it's out of knowledge that you obey, and out of knowledge that you stop to obey if there is something wrong in the way they are dealing with you. Obeying somebody only because he has power is shirk. Obeying somebody because it's right is faith. Right, I obey. Wrong, I resist, even with my parents. Meaning that there is no education of the heart and the mind without critical thinking. How are you going to say no to your parents if you don't know? Your knowledge should be based on principles. So there is something which has critical thinking, it's important. And at the same time, here what we get in the verses that is very important. فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا. So really, no obedience. And you know the hadith. لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. لا طاعة لمخلوق. No obedience to a creature in disobedience to the creator. So even with your parents. Meaning here that our education, once again, is think with your mind, think with your heart, and assess. With your mind and with your heart. How are you going to assess with your mind, with your heart? Look at the end of the verse. وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. Even if you have to say no, you go along with them in the best way. So you keep your love and act with your reason. Your intellect to say no, your love to carry on going along. So this respect towards them is very important. And this is sometimes what we have to say to some people when they convert to Islam. It's as if because I say La ilaha illallah, I enter into Islam, I forget the fact that no, I have وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. Ma'rufa is the way in the Quran. Al-ma'ruf is what is good. So even if your parents are not Muslims, صَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيا مَعْرُوفًا. It's just, I'm not going to obey in anything which is wrong, but I have to go along. I have to accompany you in the best way. Meaning what? Because I understand the way I have to be with Allah and thanking Him, I need to serve you even though I don't obey to what you are asking. I don't obey when it's unjust, but I serve because this is just. This is the way I have to be. Anishkur lillah and walidayka. So this is exactly what Asma was saying to the Prophet ﷺ when her mother was coming and she was not a Muslim. How should I welcome? Welcome your mother. So be good with your mother. Be careful. The fact that your heart is full of love as to your mother, because this is the status, is you are full of love as to the status and you are not obedient as to the principles. You have to go with the two. This is wisdom. This is al-hikmah, which is important in the whole process here that we can get from this, which has to do with and then telling us at the end of the verse, ثم إلي مرجعكم فأنبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. So it's at the end, the one who is going to judge between your heart and your mind, the way it's me. I'm the ultimate judge. But you have to understand the relationship, which first Allah, thanking Him, acknowledging Him, His presence, thanking Him, getting the relationship right with your parents, and with your heart and your mind, the critical thinking. You have to be critical. What does it mean? It means that for the parents, and he's saying this to his son. He's saying this to his son. So, as a father, as a mother, I have to give you the right way to obey and to give you the right way to understand. And I have to give you space for you to say, on this I'm not going to obey. So I need to give you this understanding, but the space to have your critical thinking, which is based on the dialogue, which is based on this discussion. His son and this understanding that Luqman got from Allah, you have to be, to assess the way you have to be with your parents in the way you are critical within the family and within the power of your parents, which once again is an attitude that you have to have everywhere. Education is about this. Education is about being somebody who can assess, having the means to assess what is right and what is wrong, even with your father and your mother, which is part of the educational process that we have here. Now, if you go ahead, or just by the way, وَاتَّبِعْ سَبِيلَ مَنْ أَنَابَ إِلَيْهِ. Once again, I forgot this, which is also important. You have to follow the path of the people who are coming back to me. So once again, you have to, there is a way. All what we are doing, as I said, education is a journey. And you have to follow people. You have to follow people, so you follow with your heart the people who are coming close to me, who are following me, but once again, not in a blind way. So when there is faith, there is no blindness, even with power. Moreover, with power, never, never, ever, there is something which is blind acceptance of anything except with Allah. And if you do this with Allah, know that you are doing it for yourself, not for Him. He doesn't need you. You need Him. So you need Him. So this faith towards Him is blind as to your faith to Allah. It's Islam. You give everything from you. But this has as a consequence in your life that you have to assess any other power with your heart, with your mind, and with your critical thinking. So the way you are with God, this Islam, entering into this, what we translate in English, which is not completely right, submission to Him is freedom from any other power. This is education. This is empowerment in the very essence of education. Now we come to something which is another dimension, which is the first circle of your way of being with your parents, and coming with another dimension within education, which is exactly connected with what we were saying here. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying through Luqman, something which is essential. يا بني إنها إن تقوم مثقال حبة من خردل فتكون في صخرة أو في السماوات أو في الأرض. even if it's an atom, a mustard seed, and this is hidden in a rock or in the sea or in the earth, Allah will come with it. What does it mean? Why is he talking to his son like this? He's saying, look, with me, your father, and with me, your mother, you have to be critical. You have to listen. Now, know that at the end, you have to have this consciousness with your own self. So at the end, Allah is seeing everything, which means come back to yourself as to your intention and as to the very essence of your relationship with Allah is based on your own consciousness. Education is monitor yourself, which is not the Sufi tradition, is the Islamic tradition. Education is monitor yourself. Come back to your own. Know that Allah is seeing everything. So you're not going to lie. So this critical thinking as to the power of your parents is the critical thinking as your own self, ego, your self-perception. It has to do with your own self. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing everything. And this is also something which has two dimensions. Is He can see everything, which means that with Allah and with yourself, it's not only about the bad dimension of yourself. Very often we translate this as He's saying everything. You know, this is the way, when we look at verses like this only from a moral perspective, we always start with, you know, the sense of guilt. Oh yes, He sees everything. No, it's not this. That everything He sees, it means that everything that you have in yourself is something that He is saying. It's the other side of it is the hadith of Jibril, al-ihsan, an ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tara. So he worship God as if you were seeing Him. So He sees everything, all the details. Meaning what? Even if you fail and your intention is good, He sees that. So your judgment is not what the people see. The judgment is what Allah knows. So trust Him. That's the point. Trust Him. But check yourself. Monitor yourself. So it's a sense of what? As much as we started with the sense of dependence, here it's about autonomy. This first dimension of you. You are autonomous. Check yourself. Nobody is going to do that. So, and we know this, that al-mukallaf, you know, you are Muslim before being Muslim. You prayed before praying. You know that you are praying without even knowing it when you were young. And at one point, you start praying with consciousness. This consciousness is what? What does it mean here? Is you start to be mukallaf when you are autonomous. Autonomous means when I do something, I'm responsible of what I'm doing. Okay? But in fact, it's not this. It's not I'm responsible of what I'm doing. I have a self-consciousness. This consciousness, a self-conscious, is the very beginning of being autonomous. And this is what He's telling His son. Anything that you are doing, know with your consciousness that in fact Allah is seeing it. So it's not self-consciousness in action, is in being first. Is know this, that it has to do with your being. So it's the first step of empowerment is use your conscience to monitor yourself. You depend on God, but you are autonomous with human beings and with yourself. So you are mukallaf. So this is what he's saying. And once again, this is the step that you have within education. And for us today, it's an essential question. When we are thinking about the way we are teaching and the way we are providing the Islamic knowledge to our children, to our students, to you, is how much autonomy do you get in the educational process? And autonomy means I have the necessary knowledge to act in the right way where I am. So the necessary knowledge is not the necessary knowledge in an absolute term, is the necessary knowledge in this environment. in this situation here, in this society. So it might be that in specific societies, the knowledge is not the same as here. How much are we autonomous here with the knowledge that we need to get in order to behave the right way? So education is always adapted to the environment. Why? Because the way you are autonomous in a specific environment changes depending on the environment and the society. We are not. In some society, you can become very autonomous very early. In others, it's quite different. It depends how you are within the society. So this is where this understanding for us, the contemporary understanding of this, it's important, is empowerment and autonomy are the two first principles and foundations of education here, which is important. And God will come with every single thing that it's known and known. Inna Allah latifun khabir. God is 10 minutes. Okay, I'm quite good. And then with this sense of autonomy, this is where he is saying, Ya bunayya, aqim as-salah. So this is where you understand that aqim as-salah is not, we know the hadith that you have to start when you are 7 years old and then 10 years old. All this, which is, that's very important because there is something in our education which is training the body. But training the body cannot be done without educating the mind and the heart. So at one point say, aqim as-salah. So your way of being autonomous will be when you start praying with your conscience, when you start praying with your heart, this is where you have an autonomy. This is where you start to be, you understand your relationship to Allah, that in fact praying is what? Is to know get it right. Praying is to know in an autonomous way your dependency. Get that? In an autonomous way, I'm autonomous, but I know that I'm dependent on God. Is when you have the consciousness that you are dependent in an autonomous way. It's not because your father is telling you or your mother. Now it's you. You know it with your conscience that you are dependent. Praying is acknowledging in a very autonomous way that now this is where I need God. So when you know for yourself that you need God is aqim as-salat. So this is something which once again is the starting point of this process. And then the impact of that, which is everywhere in the Quran, wa'mur bil ma'ruf. So you have to have this action, this behavior. So as-salah is your relationship with God. Wa'mur bil ma'ruf is your relationship with people. Okay, a'mur bil ma'ruf, this is where with God you pray, with people you serve, and you do what is good. So everything is good here as the starting point of you being autonomous, except at the end of the verse, وَأْمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, so resist what is bad. And then you have وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ إِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. What he's saying to his son is, okay, now you pray, and as we said, it's your relationship with God. You command what is good, which is the way you deal with people. You resist what is bad. And then straight away, it's going to be a struggle. وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ. So be patient and perseverant. So education is about this resistance. To be educated to resist. To be educated to be patient, to be perseverant, and to have this endurance, which is essential in your education. So once again, he's putting praying, acting or behaving, promoting what is right, resisting what is bad in something which has to do, it's about a sabr. And you have it in the verse. Inna Allah ya'muru bis-sabr was-salah. Which means Allah is from the very beginning, there is no faith, no education without patience. because it's a long process. And there is no way of being with God and being with human being without patience. It's the process. Education is educating oneself to be patient, perseverant, and endurant. This is the way it is. This is life. So he's telling him, إِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. You have to understand that in your life, when you are with God, it's going to be based on this sabr, which is an essential quality, but an essential reference in the Quran when it comes to education. So quickly here, so we have now, you can get the circle. And now it's opening up towards human being. It's the way you are going to deal with human being when it comes to وَلَا تُسْعَرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا, meaning that what you have here and turn not you cheek away from people in false pride, and walk not haughtily on earth, which here is an attitude which has to do with all what we have been saying in the way we deal with people. The way you are educated has to have an impact on what we understand with the tarbiyah. Tarbiyah is the way you get the knowledge with God and the way you have behavior with human being. And you know the difference between transmitting knowledge and educating people. What we are talking about here is the way you have to be on earth, which is full of humility. And there are ways that you can see the humility. Is the way you talk and the way you walk. Here in the verses. Is the way you work with pride and with this kind of arrogance, and the way you talk. Which in fact, it's what? We saw this in Surah Al-Hujurat. If there is arrogance in your heart, it will be seen in your words. And if there is arrogance in your mind, it will be seen in the way you walk. So these are signals in the way you are with people. Meaning for every one of us that in fact any educational system who will try to give you only knowledge, and this knowledge not having an impact in the way you behave, your gesture, your way you are on earth, your way you speak, it's not only to speak good English, but to speak for the good. So this is essential in the way you have to behave. And this is where you can see that the circles here, it's opening up. It started with anishkur lillah, and now the way you deal with the people, which is, in fact, what does it mean? Is that your education is always to be on earth in the way of serving the people and not to show your own power. It's a process where your empowerment is to serve and not to show your power. So it's a paradoxical way. Be empowered to serve, not empowered to be arrogant. So education is about this liberating process to serve the people with your freedom and not to be served with your arrogance. As it is said here, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ وَاقْصِدْ فِي مَشْيِكَ. So be very, as it is said, I don't know how it is, be modest in the bearing and lower your voice. The ugliest of all voices is the loud voices of us. So this is once again the way you speak, and once again you can see this, which is in fact the power of your freedom is never to be arrogant with your voice. And remember always the story of Moses and Harun when they are sent to the Taghut, to the one who is the transgressor, who said, أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى, and they are asked, وَقُلَ لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا. So never use your voice in an arrogant way. It's about kindness, softness, but courage. And your courage is never with your speaking loud, is speaking right. speaking right is different from speaking loudly. And this is what here, once again, it's all about what? What is this dimension that we have with all these verses? This is the impact of education. This is the behavior. This has to do the ethical side of your behavior. This is where you understand inductively how the Prophet, peace be upon him, was. إِنَّكَ عَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You have a good character, and this character is all based on the way you have to deal with the principles. But this is coming from your relationship with God from the beginning. So we end here by two things that I wanted to say just after this. We have all this process, and this is where you serve the people, you are not arrogant, you are careful, and the whole education is the way, once again, I repeat this, which is important, acknowledging God, understanding is the very meaning of shukr. If you want to educate your kids and human beings to say thank you, you need to educate them to understand the relationship, from where come the gifts. And then if you want to empower them with faith, is to empower them to serve on earth, to be humble, to work on earth, and to have this, to master their own ego and to liberate themselves. And then just after this, what do you have is this. If you don't get this, your relationship with the world will be completely wrong. And this is where you have just, أَلَمْ تَرَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَخَّرَ لَكُم مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Are you not aware that God has made subservient to you all that is in heavens and all that is on earth, and has lavished upon you his blessing? Here, this is the point. With all what we said with your education, this is the way you are going to understand the power that you have on earth and the power that you have. If you are not able to master your own power with yourself, to monitor yourself, the way you are going to deal with earth is by excessive power towards the earth. سَخَّرَ لَكُم مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. All this is at your service. And you are going to deal with it if you know how to deal with yourself, if you know how to deal to monitor yourself. So once again, it's a very deep discussion, even in our way. Do you remember the discussion that we have on environment? Islam is not about master the limits on environment. It's you. The problem is in you. The problem is that you don't get it. You don't get that the problem is even a mustard seed will be seen. So it's in you. The problem with your relationship with the whole is your relationship with your heart. And education is about this. It's having the two dimension, which is what? As we said at the beginning, it's wisdom. Wisdom is not the way you deal with nature. Wisdom is the way you deal with yourself in order to be able to deal with nature. This is wisdom. This is the balancing process. And education is about that. Education is about this balance between this and that. And this is why you have this. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يُجَادِلُكَ فِي اللَّهِ بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. So everything which came from Al-Quran, from Allah, it's about this ilm, and the people who are rejecting, they are rejecting with it this guidance. And this guidance is exactly what you are saying. The guidance is acknowledging God, getting a human being, understand his relationship, thanking Allah, and by the way you deal with nature is for you the way you thank him. And you know that praying is thanking, is the way we thank Allah. Acting is the way we thank Allah, or behaving, and serving human being is the way we thank Allah. Everything has to be this relationship of thanking him. So this relationship, it's everywhere. This is why we can say that Islam shamil. But shamil in this way. Shamil is not the dogma is everywhere, or dogmas are everywhere, but in fact, serving is everywhere. Shamil in the way serving Allah is everywhere. In the way you use your power, in the way you acknowledge your needs. And just the last thing that I wanted, a very important thing, two very important things. The problem that we have with people, that in fact education is liberation. And the first attitude of people is to say, when you come with this truth, we are following our fathers. So be careful that educating is even to liberate yourself from the cultural or what was told to you by your parents, which could be wrong, and the history. Look at the verse that is coming here, which is the reaction of the people who doesn't acknowledge Allah. وَإِذْ قِيلَ لَهُمِ اتَّبِعُوا مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ قَالُوا بَلْ نَتَّبِعُ مَا وَجَدْنَا عَلَيْهِ آبَاءَنَا. Meaning, look at the distortion very quickly, is that as much as in Islam, in the name of God, you respect your parents, as much as in the name of Islam, in the name of God, you check everything which was given to you by your parents. And the first reaction is the power of liberation for God is resisted or rejected by the people in the name, oh no, we are not following you, we follow our parents. And be careful, one of these dimensions of shirk is what my culture, what my society gave me is much more important than what Allah is calling me to do, or what you are calling me to do. All the prophets, and this is why you are not coming here in Britain and you think that the people are going to tell you, they are telling you exactly this. Many of the things that you are hearing by people in this country with your presence as Muslims is exactly this. They use other words, but this is what they have in mind. We are following what we find our fathers and mothers with. Who are you? You are changing everything. They are telling you exactly the same thing. So in fact, there is a hidden shirk here in the way they look at history and culture. This is us, this is my identity. In fact, you don't realize that sometimes you are touching exactly this. They don't say this, but this is what they mean. You know, if you have everything, all these people, for example, about you, their reaction. So once again, you get that as an answer. And the last thing is, من يسلم وجهه إلى الله وهو محسن فقد استمسك بالعروة الوثقى. العروة الوثقى is this, the way it's translated here is, where is that? How do you translate that in English? Yes. Now, whoever surrenders his whole being unto God and is a doer of good has indeed taken hold of a support most unfailing. This is al-urwat al-wusqa, is taking the strong side of thing. So once again, this is the decision which is important, which is you can follow your fathers, you can follow your culture, and you can decide. And this is a choice. This is a choice. You can follow what is right. And for us as Muslims, wisdom is to understand why some are resisting and to decide to follow what is right. So at the same time, you have this understanding of why the people are resisting, and our education should be based on this, should be based on choosing the right path, choosing the right way of being empowered and serving people, while at the same time understanding that sabr is essential, and you will have people telling you in the name of their understanding of their identity, I'm following what I got. And in fact, is normal. This is history. This is human beings are always following a tradition, a culture, a past, a legacy, a heritage. If you come with a truth, if you come with a message, you need to get this. It's part of our education also. But it means, and this is my last point, that it means in our education, we have to be very, very cautious that our faith is liberating ourselves as we are facing people getting this sense of identity of the same jail, which is putting ourselves in the way we are receiving our religious education and to make it the way the people are receiving their culture. You get the point? That some Muslims, they are doing with the way Islam was taught to them, they have exactly the same attitude of people with their culture. Exactly the same. They say, I'm following what? And it's wrong. as much as you understand that it could be right to be educated as a Pakistani in Pakistan, you have to reassess the Pakistani education in Britain. If not, it's shirk, because you are putting culture over principle, if you understand what I mean. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
This is very specifically about a father and his relationship with the children in educating. And you suggested that this is quite different from other verses which can be universal. I just wondered if maybe you could elaborate a little bit on what the special relationship of the father is with the children, and in particular when you've got, you know, a lot of families that don't have fathers, you know, even back in the time of the prophets, a lot of them, you know, they would have gone off to wars. It's not necessarily all that practical. And so how would you, what exactly is it that is, you know, that the father has that is conveying the education to the children?
I was not putting it that way. I was not putting it the way the father has something special. I was putting it the other way by saying even the father should be involved in the educational process. So which is not a question of the mother with, you know, when you say الجنة تحت أقدام الأمهات, say the paradise is under the foot of the mother's foot, we have feet or foot? Feet, I was right. No? I said feet or foot? No, it's you know, the way we are communicating. So anyway, when we say that, the perception is very often, even in the education, your mother, and your father. It's as if some, in the Arabic or Asian or African cultures, even in the West today, but up to now, but the perception is education is the mother prerogative. And I think that what is here is not only he's involved, but there is a kind of a dialogue. It's he's telling him the steps. And this is what I want to say, is that there is something here which in education both should be involved. Now, in our society, sometimes the father is not there, even sometimes it's the opposite. But the understanding should be that there should be an involvement. Now, what also it's important in this is, if you read the studies about, you know, what I was saying at the beginning, the absent father. This is why I think that when it comes to the gender discussion, we need to speak about manhood. We speak about being a man or being a father. Because today it's not only difficult to be a mother, it's difficult to be a father on three things. First, anything which has to do with communication, which is problematic. Second, the status of authority. In traditional society, authority was, you know, the roles were quite clear. Now we don't have this, it's not clear. And it's not clear because there is something else which is important, is everything which has to do with the social status. And especially what we have in the West, and when the social status is not clear, family authority is troubled. And if you, so the you know, the traditional setting is just now no longer the case. We don't have something which is, you know, the old society. So this is where we have to reassess this, not by not acknowledging that the rules are here, but by rethinking once again the respective roles and the way things should be done within the family first. So what I was just saying is that having this idea that we have in some of our countries of origin, that it's a mother business, it's wrong. It's not wrong only for the sake of equality. It's wrong for the sake of the children, for their balanced personality. this is what we are talking about here.
And the last point you made about sort of people following the ways of their forefathers is very relevant, especially with the way civic education has been sort of presented, and this sort of trying to create this British identity and the death of multiculturalism and all of that stuff. There was just one point I wanted some clarification on. Everything you said sort of generally falls within the liberal sort of school of thought within education, as opposed to sort of Rousseau's idea of progressive education, which sort of doesn't believe in sort of absolute principles. Now, towards the end, you said something about education and relevance, and it being specific areas of education. Now, that might sort of stand at odds with the idea of the development of wisdom. So in liberal education, the idea would be to create very autonomous, intelligent, critically conscious individuals who can then navigate their way around the world as they find it, because they're capable of making those choices, as opposed to the progressivists who would perhaps try and engineer an education for specific circumstances, specific societies, and not pay so much attention to development of knowledge for its own sake, for wisdom, and being able to sort of equip young people with the kind of tools, the sort of timeless tools of being able to navigate around. I wonder where you stand on that.
It's a very interesting discussion, and it's not a simple. I don't think that we have simple answers. Even though I think that this is where the balance is very important, is to be able to navigate or to be efficient within your society is something which is essential for us, if and only if you know the goals and you understand the limits. So there is an ethical understanding based on the objective, which is for us serving God. Thanking Him means in all I do, I have this conscience. I get this understanding, this deep understanding that I'm serving Him. So meaning, وَأْمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, which is promoting what is right and resisting. So we have something which has to do with a concept of life that is based on something that we can call, and we are conservative on this, morality. Efficiency without morality is science without conscience, is efficiency without God. We can't do that. So this is why it's balancing. But anyone who is telling you, in the name of your faith, we should have an education that does not take into account the environment, that's wrong. You need to take into account the environment, but you cannot go as far as to take into account the environment and forget the principles. That we end up being efficient with the world with no path, no way. You need to know the way. The way is to navigate. You know, by the way we translate اهدنا الصراط المستقيم, the right path. Yes, it doesn't mean that it's a right path. Is if the path is like this, that you follow what is right, the path of what is right. الصراط, the path of what is right. So it could be like this, but it's right. It's right. So in every situation, it's right. It's not straight. No, because this is not life. This is dream. Life is not like this. Life is complicated. It means that your path is going to be like this, but in every situation, you should decide for what is right. This is education. Don't give me an education which is idealizing the path and telling me it's a straight path. No, it's the path of what is right. Meaning, in every single situation, you need to decide what is right. This is efficiency. Success for us is not to be efficient without principle. It's to be efficient in the name of principle and with principle without forgetting the principle, which is all in one word. Thank Him. Thank Him in everything that you are doing. If you thank Him, it means you can't forget. You can't forget the meaning, because you thank Him for what you have and what you can do. If you are able to act and you thank Him, you should understand that in this situation you have to look for what is right in an efficient way. So it's deep here, but it means that all our educational systems should be adapted to the environment to give the children the means to choose what is right. How am I going to choose what is right in an environment if I know myself and if I know the environment? This is why I can decide what is right. But without understanding the environment, without knowing myself, so if you don't start with the principles that we have at the beginning, anishkurillah, and then you don't understand where you are in the world, you can't decide what is right. The path of what is right is based on your intelligence, your understanding, and your intentions. So it's always, I think that it's important to get always these two dimensions, which is the environment and the goals, the ends, the purposes of everything that we are doing. And this is why we have to challenge the educational system. And you remember one thing, that some people are seeing only with one eye. And you listen to them say, that's right, but there is something which is missing. I can tell you something that sometimes I'm with people in the educational process, everything that they are saying is right, except that there is only one eye. I don't know if you understand what I mean. But the ethical side of things. So the way they speak about freedom, yes, true. But it's freedom without dignity. It's efficiency without meaning. You understand that it's one eye. There is something missing, which is the opposite of wisdom. Wisdom is two eyes. And the Dajjal is one eye. Once again, I think that when we come back to the Quran and we try to understand some of the elements and the principles and the objectives that we can find from the Quran, in fact, at the end, what we understand is that we can't question the system. We question a vision, a concept. And what we said, it's a concept of life and a concept of death. And I think that this is exactly what you said. In fact, tell me how you educate, I will know and get the understanding of how you see life, because this is connected. So, it's a very deep discussion. I kept on repeating this when I was talking to an economist, a French economist, and telling him, at the end, there are means, and from an ethical perspective, we can use the means and add an ethical objective. And he smiled and said, no, you are wrong. In the means, there is already an essence and might be a lack of the ethical thing that you want to add by definition. So he was talking about the television, for example, and said, if you think that you can add an ethical goal to the means, it means that you don't get the essence of the means. It's very deep, and say, wow. It means that if we are questioning the system, we need to question the essence. And to question the essence, we have to come back to what we are talking about now. It's just, what are we talking about? So, wisdom here is not starting from scratch and say, okay, we are going. No, it's to look at what we have and to understand that there is a reform process that should be based on a deep understanding of what we want to achieve. So this is where all what we have now not all, but the majority of the projects that we had coming from Islamic education, in fact, is not enough questioning the goals. And very often we have Islamic schools. We have two problems with Islamic schools. Is these are not Islamic schools, they are schools for Muslims. Meaning protecting the Muslims from a dangerous surrounding society. So let us put them together. And sometimes homeschooling is done exactly the same. Is that it's not enough for you to teach your son or your daughter. It depends how you deal with the surrounding society. Because this is my child could be a protective way towards the surrounding society. And it could be a disaster if you don't get the sense of, at the end, you do this to equip him or her to deal with the surrounding society, not as your property, but as a legacy, something that you are giving. Which means, in fact, it's all in the way you look at the society and you look at what is the essence of education. So some Muslims are doing, so they want schools for Muslims, and then when you look at the way the concept of the whole school is to get the same results, but with our means, which is wrong. At the end, we are not questioning the objectives. What we should do is to question the objectives. And even the notion of success, the notion of efficiency, the notion of what it means to be educated. So this is where one dimension of the problem, not questioning the purposes, the aims and the goals. This is one. The second is to think that with means, we are able to translate our vision, only with means. And this is what we have in all our fields, is we Islamize the means, while the whole project is to Islamize the goals. Meaning that the Islamic characteristic of the means is only gotten through the deep Islamization of the goals. Why I'm saying this is that even non-Islamic means with the right Islamic goals are becoming Islamic. But if you have only Islamic means, you might miss the goal by having Islamic means for a completely wrong project. And you are completely misled. Because you look at the means, these are Islamic. But at the end, the goals are exactly the same as the dominant system, which is exactly what we have in economy. Islamic economy is very often the right means, the wrong goals. In education, it's the same. So this is why we need a critical discussion on this. And it's deep, it's very deep, is how the problem now, the three problems that we have. The first is that very often we are not equipped enough to deal in a critical way with what we have in front of us, which is the system itself. Because once again, with this, you need to look at the systems and understand how it works and what are, even in the categorization of disciplines. Why mathematics? Why languages? What do you mean by this? What is important in this? So, for example, anyone who is telling you, as we have now in our schools, 1 hour to teach Quran or to get the language. The very essence of all what we are saying is the vision is crossing the disciplines. So by essence, anything which has to do with Tawheed, understand the diversity of disciplines and the unity of the vision. So transdisciplinary is essential. Why? Because if you look at what we have in our modern schools now, it's from fragmentation of knowledge, is knowledge that is acting against the ethical understanding of knowledge. But it's knowledge. So you are misled once again because it's knowledge. No one can tell you. It's even more knowledge than the knowledge that we are getting. This is advanced knowledge, but advanced fragmented knowledge is against the comprehensive knowledge, which is the vision that we have. So in anything which has to do with homeschooling or private schools or understanding, this is the questions that we need to have, is the holistic approach that is needed, questioning the goals and not being misled with the means. And then there are three questions that are coming out of this. What is the meaning of autonomy? What is the meaning of freedom? And what is the meaning of ethics? These are also questions that are very important, because ethics has to do with freedom. Why? Because ethics is in fact the wise way of dealing with your freedom. Ethics is a wise way of dealing with freedom. So you are adding wisdom with freedom. And then when we speak about autonomy, is to be able to decide for yourself, but in the wise way, and with dealing with your freedom in a wise way. These are all concepts that are connected to our concept of human being. So then there is no discussion about education without the concept of life, the concept of human beings, and all this for us is based on the concept of our relationship to Allah and to the means. So all what you are saying in for example, dealing with the context is, for example, for years I have been saying we don't have a problem with the secular system. We are able to navigate. And I have my brother who is telling me no. There is something in the secular system in itself which is a problem. Which is in fact the essence, the substance is problematic. Because at the end there is an understanding that it's a godless system. Whatever you say about it, there is something which is wrong in itself. So don't try to put some values in a system which is empty in its essence. So you are putting values at the periphery, while at the center, the values are not there. And it's a fair point. It's a very, very fair point. And this is why the whole question is it's not mutually exclusive. Is how you navigate within the system, knowing that at the end, there is something which is missing. But the universality of our message is to understand that within the system, dealing with the people around us, there is something which is stronger than this godless system, which has to do also with the fitra of the people. Are we able to push the system to question the center? Are we able, with our presence, to question the center? Or are we only having other means to try to get the same results? So far, we are not good at that. So far, we want the same results with other means. We are not entering into something that, in fact, you are equipped much more than anybody before us in the West to do the job. Because we were in other countries. Now, the Muslim presence in the West should be not questioning the means, but questioning the goals. This is exactly where there is a crisis in our society. So this is our role. Our role is exactly this. And you are more and more equipped by this discussion. When I'm listening to you now, it's quite clear that you are equipped. The problem is some, because they are equipped to understand, they say it's too complicated for me. So you are in a danger to understand it so much that you end up isolating yourself. This is very vicious. الشيطان الشغال هنا. Really, is you get the complexity, and because you see this, you say, oh, even more, I even need more protection because it's very vicious. And you know what? It is very vicious. It is very vicious. But to the complexity of this, this is the simplicity of our, coming back to the simplicity of our principles, and understanding something that at the end, the simplicity of our answers could be the right response to the complexity of the questions. So this is our contribution. I think in education, this is a very important contribution. But when I'm listening to you, I'm saying, okay, in fact, from where I am, after 30 years within the field of education, I listen to you being young and say, you have the right questions. So any one of you who is leaving the battlefield to go for protection is not getting the very understanding of jihad, because this is your jihad. Some are being killed elsewhere. You have to be resistant here with these questions. If not, this is a lack of courage. But this is what we have to do. And especially in the field of education, by coming with these deep questions, it's going to be very difficult, but this is where we have to get, our hope is in you know, very complicated systems are like the Surat al-Ankabut. You think it's very complex and it's very fragile. And the people are in need. There is a crisis here in anything which has to do with education, but not about the structure. You know, when people are so obsessed with reforming the structure, it means they are lost as to the essence. And look at all the systems. They are all talking about changing structures all the time. It means that there is something which is missing in the essence. We might have to question that. Wallahu a'lam.